Good morning, everyone. I see my webcam's now working again. Fantastic. Man, you'd think I just get the thing going, and well, that's what I get for buying those cheap, those cheap, crappy ones on Amazon. I guess I'm gonna have to commit, huh? Ugh, fine. Uh, I'm too cheap. I can't help myself. Looking at the mic. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we've got all sound going. Perfect. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. Hopefully everyone was able to rest up, relax, and all that fun stuff so that you're all ready to rock and roll for this morning. If you're trading this morning, early in the morning, man alive, I hope you survived the roller coaster. Jeez, oh Pete. Before jumping in, though, on the right side of the screen there, make sure to read through the live trading morning prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that is inside there. Just a quick note for you all before we jump on in. Keep in mind that the YouTube broadcast does have between like a 5 and 30-second delay depending on where you're logging in from, which will definitely impact the timeliness of what I may be talking about at any given moment. Also, I just wanted to take a second to give a shout out to the latest members that joined last night, this morning, etc. Thank you so much for the support. I'm pumped to have you on the SSFTG family. If you aren't a member yet, you do have a few different options available to you to check out if you're looking to further your trading education and career. First off, here on YouTube, you can check out the join button below the stream. The YouTube family gains access to the extended trading hours room, which continues the morning session from 10 until, 10:30, 11 o'clock, whenever we end up when things slow down, basically. Every member gains permanent access to our Discord chat server, and of course, you get the awesome badge next to your name here on YouTube to show your support, and just looks cool. To understand our trading approach and what it is that I'm doing here every day in the room, look no further than the Day Trading Academy. This isn't some small PDF guide that you're going to finish in an afternoon, right? This is, you're looking at something a little bit heavier here. You got about 19 hours or more of course and study material, including homework, review, study guides, etc. So you better tuck in if you're going to be going that route. And then finally, the big kahuna, the Mac Daddy, the VIPs. VIPs, they get exclusive permanent access to the non-delayed stream covering the entire morning session from 9 until whenever we end to ensure that you're on the fastest connection possible, and that way you don't miss a beat along the way. Of course, alongside that, we do also have our the access to the VIP monthly webinars, which we actually just had one this past weekend, private events, one-on-one scheduling access, all kinds of cool stuff. So whether you're here for the very first time or you're a seasoned VIP veteran over on the Zoom stream, welcome. I'm glad to have you trading alongside with me today, analyzing these psychopathic markets of ours. Let's take a look at some news, take a look at some charts, see what's going on for today. I don't know why the webcam's not working. I'm sure I'll hear hear that question a couple times. It's all good. But I'm just gonna have to suck it up and get a better one. Just go for a Logitech camera. Yeah, I know. I had the Logi, the big wide cool looking one, and then my cat chewed through the cable, and it's like, man, it's funny how fast, $100, $200 can just disappear. Like, man, freaking cat, come on. So I don't know, with the cat around, knowing that he does like gnawing on things, I have a hard time buying expensive electronics unless I'm locking him out. But at least the nice thing is you can just get a ton of backups. Just keep them all in the closet. Oh, man. Just swap them out like a clip, Whatever. And on the left side, don't forget to grab the morning DP levels. That way you got all those covered for today. And keep an eye on the major 7 markets that we're taking a look at. The NASDAQ, S&P, gold, crude, euro, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. All the big ones there. Looking at the news calendar for today, and I split it up a little bit so that way it would make it a little bit easier, so you can see what's going on. Whoops, I just realized I need that to be running. There we go. There we go. All right, looking at the news calendar for today, we have some 8:15 news earlier today at the ADP non-farm employment change. That was forecasted 600,000. As we go into today's session, 10 o'clock now, we've got 10 o'clock pending home sales, and that's forecasted at negative 0.8%. And then 10:30, we have the crude oil inventories, and that forecast is a negative 4.686. Now, you'll notice down here, I also pasted yesterday's API report just to save everyone the hassle. It felt like that kind of made sense. So we've got yesterday's API report that came out at a negative 8.153. Negative 8.153, they're forecasting a negative 4. If we look, negative 4.6, negative 4.4, we can kind of see pretty straightforward what's going to be happening next, right? So realistically, it makes a lot of sense that we see a crude oil inventory come out at around a -8, likely going to be a bit more bullish than before. So going into the rest of the charts and all that fun stuff here, looking at the NASDAQ first off, we've got a very obvious bullish cycle going on that is hitting some serious levels of completion. I know we talk about this every single time we talk about the NASDAQ this morning and yesterday morning and the morning before and probably the few mornings before that. This thing is just massively overextended to the upside. And a lot of traders are going to be looking for projections and objectives and all of those things to be met. And while those are being met, that doesn't necessarily mean that the market has to go screaming all the way back to the downside, but it does at least suggest that we're likely to go a bit more sideways. As far as the overall objective, typically when we've got this kind of structure that's this nice and tidy, then really a lot of times that completionary move ends in about the same distance as that first leg, and slightly, right around there if you measure that up. It's almost perfect. So as far as a measured move from an Elliott wave perspective goes, it's there. You know me, as far as we've got that first and then the middle one is longer and you add the first, it's all there, right? It's all stacking up in the same spot. Along with that, if we're looking at it from the slightly closer channel perspective, we've got maybe a channel, more of a megaphone. Ugh, man, that looks terrible. I guess for lack of anything else, this is about the only thing it's got going, which also has completion up at the top. My concern, fairly obvious, that we haven't come back down to the middle portion yet. They're just kind of hovering there. They haven't come back to the middle. They haven't come back to the low at all. Yikes. If it is going to pull back, that might be a little bit of a heavier pullback. But either way, if the market just keeps going up, so we've got to keep on going as long as the bulls are showing up and they keep driving. We'll look at the order flow in a little bit here to see how that's looking on the NASDAQ when we zoom in a bit closer. Over on the S&P, we did get a nice little flush to the downside. And from there, if we're looking at the bottom, the S&P has just been screaming to the upside. If we go from the bottom back on June 20th, well, that weekend area back up to the highs, they still do have that POC hovering back at 39.50. That hasn't changed. So as long as they have that POC hovering back at 39.50, then a lot of potential sellers, at least, I don't know many sellers who'd want to necessarily take that to the downside. Yikes. But either way, if they were, that's where they're stuck from, and they have not repositioned back up. So if this does begin to start looking like, oh man, this thing's going to go falling through the floor, we've got to be realistic here. It might just be looking to reach back for that break even, get everyone out, and then whoop, right back up to the highs. And that would make a lot of sense given the way that this is moving because of the amount of strength. We haven't had anything other than an L1 pullback. An L2 would make a lot of sense. It's basically just allowing everybody into the party that hasn't had a chance yet. We'll see how it wants to play ball, I guess. Over on gold, it did grind through the lows, and then after breaking out through that base, well, they got stuck. Haven't really done a whole lot else here. If we're going back to, let's go, where was it? There it is. Over here. We go all the way to the ends. See if anything's changed here. Nope, POC is still hovering at the 78s. We already had that transition to the downside. Really nice breakdown. This is where, I mean, if the bulls are going to try to take it back up, they need to break back above this area. That's the previous major swing. We know how that works, right? 3 higher lows. Get the breakout, continuation, and then it's off to the races. A lot of buyers have incredibly good reward versus risk down here. I mean, realistically, if you're buying down here, then you don't, I mean, it's all the way, not necessarily just up to this interim little high, which obviously should be a point of interest. But if that breaks, I mean, geez, there's nothing to hold it until we get up into like the 1860s, aside from this little bitty correction here in the 20s. So there's a lot of distance to the upside that will allow the buyers to keep this thing going. And the risk, it's just not that high. They don't have to take that much risk to get that job done. Should be very interesting to see what they want to do with gold here. On crude oil, the long area that we were talking about yesterday, 73.04, 73.05, that rebounce zone. Actually, I think that POC changed. It was in the 20s, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was 04 to 20s. That bounce zone did bounce up, and they did get the objectives to the upside. Job done. All things complete. Even pulled back so much as to grab another break, even vindictive little higher low there, and then shot it right back up to the highs. From a swing trader's perspective, obviously, the swing traders, I don't think they would be taking that entry. They have the optimized entries a little bit further down, going for the 2-to-1s. And that would be hovering back down around those 72.75s to 72.80s, likely inside there. Either way, their objectives are still going to be floating up into the 74.20s, and they're still kind of open. So it's looking all right for them. Still looking good. Either way, whether it was a scalp or a swing, it's still working out pretty darn well. Now, keep in mind, crude oil is anticipating a bit of a bullish inventory. I mean, to be fair, they've already had a pretty good bullish bounce. So the question kind of has to come in like, well, wait a minute, you know, if we're expecting bullish news and the market's already going very, very bullish, it won't even let me draw the POC. Go over to a new day. Looking at the POC zone, you know, what kind of support resistance is going on? Is anything telling us what's happening here? And even the POC is beginning to shift. So with bullish news kind of on the horizon, this pullback kind of feels like a BTFD, but it's way too high up. A lot of traders are going to want to see that thing go boop right back. And guess where they're probably going to go back to? Right back to that break-even point. We know how the market loves coming back to those spots. So if it can get a little bit of a pop on the inventories, that would be the spot of interest for sure. Over on the euro, same thing here, but we were talking about how the POC didn't shift on this yet. Let's go over here and see. Has it moved? No. It's still up in the 22-135s. No continuation. Sellers still in control. Market's still rolling back down. There's not even close to enough volume to challenge the POC. That's way over here. Didn't even stand a chance. So, market continues its descent. Downside objectives for a lot of traders. I mean, this is a huge cycle. We've got to zoom way out here. 240-minute chart. Jeez, I'm gonna need more data on this. Let's go back. I've got 90 days already. How about 180? Let's pop backward a little bit further here. Oh man. That's where all of the problems are coming from, right there on the euro. As soon as you zoom out just a little bit, remember what we were talking about on V-bottoms, what needs to happen? V-bottoms need to break the high that started it. They failed. That's a massive problem. That explains a lot of this descent, even though you got to zoom way out to a 4-hour chart to see it. Is it applicable to a scalper? Probably not, but it's useful information, I guess, as far as reading the context. The big breakout point, obviously, it looks like everybody stopped out underneath that low. Not a single order to be found down there. Huge VVP zone, in fact, all the way down. Almost no volume until they started getting down in the 2s. And now we start seeing them challenge in. If we're looking at that from a volume perspective, they still have declining, which means that it's profit taking all the way down. We haven't seen the buyers step up to the plate yet. Wow, huge downside move. And realistically, look where it is. If the buyers are going to try to hold it, it's usually that inside swing, and that's what they're trying to hold right now. If that fails, it's game over. Like there's nothing to hold it until we get down to the 1.175s. Yikes. From there, you know, who knows? It just super cycles all the way back up to the top. But as it stands, this thing's looking pretty vicious to the downside still. You just got to zoom way out to see that volume. Over on Bitcoin, didn't quite make it up to complete the measured move yet. That's up in the 37,250s or so. It made it up to the 3668s. Well, a few $100 short. Got a little more to go here. See if they want to keep it going or not. But we are starting to pull back at least enough to kind of think, you know, wait a minute, this may be that next value pullback. There's two very, very obvious value pullbacks. Looking from the top to the bottom, that would be pullback number 1. That's pretty straightforward. If they want to get a repetitious pullback, something along those lines, it'd be like that. If they're looking for a narrower term one, then the one before that would be here to here, and that would be just a bit shallower. Looks like we're kind of close to that completion right now. So those would be the two levels that I would really want to keep my eyes on if we're going from the top to the bottom of the narrow one. It's almost there. And if they hit that one, that parks it right at the base of all those previous swings. That's about as perfect as you can ask for a zone of support. If they are going to get a larger value pullback, then we've got this next one here. Whoops. There to there. That'd be back in the 31,250s. A few zones of interest. Hey, how's it going? Welcome, welcome. Over on Ethereum, man, Ethereum making life difficult, huh? That previous swing high, all eyes on that previous swing high, and this darn thing just, man, it will not break above it. It's trying real hard. We've got the higher lows, we've got everything going to the upside, but man, running out of steam. They've got to really step up to the plate and break that top if they're going to keep this going, and if they can't, that's going to cause a lot of problems. You know, and I don't know, we'll see. It's looking pretty gross. Unless the bulls step up with like a little trap low underneath the 2100s and rocket this thing back to the highs, then this whole pullback was nothing more than a trap. Then it could get really interesting. All right. Zooming out a little bit here, the daily chart, there's no change. The daily chart closed basically on its high. If we're looking at yesterday's settlement, you can see that price did go through it a little bit afterward, after it opened up in the Asian session, but now we've dropped underneath it pretty significantly. Notice where they pulled back to underneath that major swing. It's no surprise, twin reversal right back to the upside. Jeez. That's about as big of a trap as you can ask for. Bulls are still trying to get this thing going, though. Haven't really seen them show up to the plate quite yet. This man, they're really on the fence here. So not really any reason to do anything about the daily chart. Just like we were talking about yesterday, there's been no breaks underneath the previous day's low. None, not a single one. Not even with this big flush to the downside. Nope, that wasn't enough. Looking at the 60-minute charts, the 60-minute chart really doesn't tell us much aside from the market pull back to the fastest moving average. We still are barely in any type of pullback. If we zoom way, way out here, we can see from the bigger picture, if we're looking to the upside, all the way down here from, actually, okay, well, we're going to have to kind of make up our own bottom here. This is the most recent bottom. This is from yesterday. We've got that L5 in the lows. Let's see if they're responding. After L5s, you typically get an L2. They did. All right. You've got another L5 down into an L3. Confusion. Breakout out of L3, usually ones into ones. Several ones. Usually the next one's going to be a 2. It is following the rules. So because it's following the rules to the upside, we've got to look at this from that kind of mentality of, wait a minute. The last time the market had this dip back down, we had this kind of confusion, L3, not sure what's going on, and then all of a sudden it starts making up its mind and breaks out. And after that, L1, 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 all the way back up. And there we are, later in the day, up in 14,600s again. You can almost feel it happening around the corner. So that is definitely in the back of my mind, something that I want to keep sort of sitting there, where if this bullishness starts creeping up, this is very similar to what happened back here. It got really messed up, but a lot of higher lows. Broke out again, really messed up, higher lows. Break out again. We're seeing the same thing here, getting really messed up, higher lows. Getting really messed up, maybe higher lows if they break out above. This thing's definitely on the fence, and we're hovering in the L3. Yeah, it's just kind of waiting. If it does want to come back down, maybe after the open, we could be looking for a potential wedge base on the bottom of L3, but after L3, what's happened before, they've gone back down to 5s. So I can't really hold a lot of support in the 4s. The 5s make more sense. Deep, deep pullbacks if they're going to dip. The true definition of BTFD down there, too. If we're looking at the overall volume from yesterday on that giant rally to the upside, technically that whole thing is one huge impulse. We've got the POC hovering right back in the L4. I didn't want to look at the L4. Come on. They parked that POC right on top of it. All right, there's not really much I can do about that one, huh? As far as that's concerned, I mean the L4 is there. One saving grace that might actually work in its favor if it does want to go down, and it takes its time. This might have to happen later this afternoon. But if we kind of go grindy and sideways and get messy, it could get pretty nice if it ends up like that. Might be a nice little launching point. Right now, though, we haven't seen the POC shift yet. Let's drag this forward. There it is. We are currently under that 558 POC, and we are, well, under is a loose term. They're challenging it right now. If they lose their grip here, we can kind of see what's going on. We break back above. We start churning back to the upside. That causes all the problems for the sellers and all the wonders in the world for the longs. Let's unmess up my chart a little bit here and zoom in a bit. Looking at the Asian session to Euro session transition, jeez, we've got that attempted new high all the way up into all-time highs very quickly, rotating back down, huge drop to the downside. The one thing that should be very obvious that's standing out here is what we were just talking about on a couple of the other charts on the NASDAQ to the upside. The first leg being about 1.5 times on the middle side. Usually that third one is going to be about the first leg, right? So we can take that first leg's distance from here to here, move it over, and that's likely where a lot of traders are going to be coming in for the bull side. That's where they're going to want to be coming in. There's a little bit of a caveat in that it isn't a lower low, it's actually a higher low. So that's kind of bullish in and of itself, I guess, but that's the zone if they want to get a little bit of a pullback on the open. From a cycle perspective to the downside, they started off with an L2. Considering that they sort of reset back into a 4, that's fine. With a 4 breaking back down, usually they're going to hold L1s. They did. After L1s, they're usually going to keep trying to hold L1s, but they totally failed. What's interesting here is that we see the L1 sellers try, and when they break, where did the market decide to come back to? Bing! Right there. Let them out of break even. They're gone. Those sellers are out. They were not treated very well, but they were out. And if they sold more along the way up, then that was actually a profitable trade. So, well, profitable being kind of loose depending on how many contracts they were able to get in there. Goldman with those infinite zero hacks. We've got the that bounce off there is definitely a clue. And usually if they're going to be holding this kind of bounce, we've got to look at it on the other side of things, where if buyers are buying here, their risk isn't going to be very far. Whoops, I did the colors backward. Their risk isn't going to be very far from the inverse, because if it breaks underneath the low, they're wrong. Well, that leaves the upside for a 2-to-1, and that puts 2-to-1s usually back up into the L3s or so. And lo and behold, that's where all of that resistance just so happens to show up, right? We're seeing a lot of things lining up here that are telling us that the market, even though it looks like an absolute mess, it's still following the rules really well. So we've just got to kind of fudge our eyes a little bit, look between the lines. Yeah, Bitcoin one more time, sure. The Bitcoin market, if we're looking at anything, I'm looking at two different types of pullbacks. We've got the short-term value pullback. This is like the the quick little 20% sale at Walmart that they're just trying to get rid of a couple extra things, right? Not the pullback that I really want, but the pullback that I'll accept, back down to the 34,000s. If we can get a value pullback, which would be based off of the previous dip from here to here, measuring out from here to here, that's the hot spot, 31,250. I still like the bull side. I like the bull side transition. I wish they would have still broken above these highs with a little bit more gumption. But, you know, hey, at least they broke the highs. Ethereum didn't. Better than nothing, you know. So given the fact that they have broken above the highs, that does prove that we have the potential of an attempted reversal. That doesn't mean that it's got to go happening right this second. More often than not, you get the inside pullbacks and you get those deep value pullbacks and then rotate back up. They may even try to challenge that inside trap low for 30,000. That wouldn't be a surprise at all. But everyone, I think, has their stops underneath the lows underneath that. Maybe with a buffer. You know, it is Bitcoin after all. But if it starts losing its ground underneath that, then we're going back to 20,000 like we've been talking about for a few weeks. The bulls have a shot. That's where they're at right now. They've just got to show up and finish the party. Looking at it from a volume perspective, starting from the top all the way down on just the impulse side, we've got that POC up at 578. That's still not challenged yet either. And the volume on this move back up Obviously, the POC's in the middle. Kind of curious, though. We've already bounced off that. Where are they developing? The 550s. So if the sellers are going to take control again, they've got to get under the 550s. But the problem is it doesn't leave them much room until they run into another brick wall. It's going to be a tough sell the whole way down. Got the open around the corner here. Next big time slot, right around the corner here, 928. Sellers are going to need to break underneath this 550 POC. Just kidding. They just moved it. 550, 650. We've got a little bit of a zone inside here. You can see how all of these levels are challenging one another for a POC. You're likely just going to see POC here, there, then back here, then up here, and then down here. Just consider it a zone. Right? This area is where they're going to try to land the POC at the moment. Very, it's hard to not get the skeptical side of me thinking like, man, these are really evenly spaced. It's almost like there was a lot of limit orders that were hanging out there that were just like, plus 1 tick, plus 4 ticks, plus 8 ticks. Just the way that they're sort of stacked up here. Or plus 1, plus 2, plus 3. If I were looking to get out at break even, you've seen me stack orders like that before, right? Plus 1, plus 2, plus 3. Just stack a few of them out. I don't want them all in one spot. Especially considering the fact that if we go a little bit further down, it's the same volume as this little bump right here. Now, just for sake of context, where did that bump show up? POC was back here, yeah. So that volume node was likely sellers, in context, trying to go short, miserably failing. Like, miserably failing. They rotated all the way back down, gave them a chance to exit at break even. That's what we're bouncing off of right now. So the POC that's happening right here, these sellers are trying to get it to break down, but like we've been talking about, and this adds a really strong story, the sellers are going to have a rocky road the whole way down unless they show up with one giant punch at the open. Then maybe they can get things going. The sellers are trying. They just got a lot of stuff in the way. Got the open right around the corner here. We are breaking below the POC. If sellers are going to take it to the downside, they have very limited time to do so. But they might. Popping back up, retesting the POC again. Right ahead of the open. What better time? Why not? Perfect timing. Wow, what a bull bar. We haven't hit the open yet. Yeah, I'm not going to want to do much with a short side with a candle that looks like that. Back above the POC, they're still fighting over it. Here comes the open. Big bear bar back to the downside, closing back underneath those 556s. Sellers have a shot to try to get things going here. Ooh, popping back above the 556s. Sellers who may have tried, I don't trade at the open, but sellers who may have tried, they might have just got juked here. Watch this pullback for a snap back to POC. Nice little dip back to POC. Snapped right back underneath it, though. When we're playing at the open, I don't give it a whole lot of room. It's either going to jump in my favor or I don't want it. Probably won't be able to get back to POC, but a flush close down into that cluster might be a little bit nice. These reversal candles off of the highs make this very, very difficult because every time the bulls try, they fail. And now we're underneath it. Yeah, and look at this failure. So now it's starting to chunk back to the downside. The bulls who were attempting to get this thing going back to the upside, if they hung out, now they're underwater. And it's sinking quick. Inside gap down on the S&P. I think, yeah. Ooh, yeah, inside gap down on the S&P. Close. Now, we know bulls are potentially on the wrong side of things and the market's attempting to rotate down. We haven't trapped underneath that previous low, but we're still underneath the POC and sellers are trying to take back over. It's super aggressive and we're attempting to challenge the base, but this is the type of breakout momentum that a lot of sellers are going to be looking for. Now they just ran straight into the wall down there. Oh, wow, springboard right off of that thing. That is a rotation back down, completing the objective from before. Now we got to see if the sellers can rotate underneath this. From an impulse leg, backing up a little ways. We have also cracked underneath that one. Good. Oh, they tried to break it, but they didn't. Uh-oh. That could cause some problems. Bulls attempting to pop this back to the upside. They're still holding balance kind of in that value area. All right, chopping back down again. Very nice, strong bear bar. Every time it tries to close under that zone, though, man, it just gets sucked right back up into it. This is going to be a tough spot. This is kind of that broad-faced candle down here that is the brick wall. Like, they've got to really work through this if they're going to challenge this base. Whoo! Lordy, lordy. Wow. All right. Did JP just hit buy market? What happened there? Holy cow. Now, it's hard to ignore the fact that they've got that wick right up on the top there, and the market's rotating back down again, especially after a big volume chunk like that. If sellers are going to be taking it lower, that's the type of volume that they're going to be looking for to get that job done. But they've got to break the low. Because the question really becomes now, is this break-even buyers? Are these sellers re-upping their positions? A bear bar back down, well, that helps a lot for the sellers, although it's forcing them to sell right at the bottom. First 5-minute bar. We're not even through the first 5 minutes yet. Holy cow. Now we are. First 5 minutes are done. Whoa, what a candle. Whew. Yikes. All right, first 5 minute bar on the NASDAQ is going to be with a POC hovering at 38.25. 38.25? That's not right. 38. And the first 5 on the S&P is at 80.75. All right, they got that new low. Now the question is, was this just a trap for that larger value pullback, kind of completing this drive down? Right? Are they finishing the job here on this move lower, and all they wanted to do was just vindict everyone out of the lows? You better believe swing traders are in down here. Out of the money calls, etc. The buyers who are looking for that big giant rotation back up to all-time highs today. Yeah. Those are the ones that are on board right now. That does mean that the probability is pretty garbage, but the reward is fantastic, so it's worth the risk. Swings will be attacking it down here like it's going out of style. Big rotation back up. Right back to the POC too. Sheesh. Now remember, we do have the impulse POC, but now that we've made a new low, technically speaking, we could all combine that into one, or we could just subdivide this in like this down to a new low. There. We're back retesting the POC to the downside. If shorts are going to be looking to attempt this to the downside, this is where they're going to be shorting from, and their stops will be above the highs. So this is where sellers will kind of fight back a little bit. Doesn't mean it's a worthwhile fight, but we'll see. Short-term POC shifting to the upside here at 553. Remember, it's a developing short-term POC, a little bit more irrelevant in a sense. S&P almost back up to settlement. I really don't believe a bear move to the downside here if we can get a push down into the 40s. But I would like to see the POC get taken back from these sellers, if that were the case. Oh, well, asking you shall receive, huh? See if we can get a little bit of a pushback here. I didn't get filled. Fantastic. Let's see if they can give a little bit more of a push down. They broke above the top. I didn't get a fill on the pullback. So now I'm waiting to see, can we get a little bit more info here? POC shifting back to the upside. So short-term longs who are buying that dip, they'll be exiting as a scalp on that little value pop. Cracking back above it. Man, what a bummer. I didn't get a fill on the dip. Canceled it, jumped up, pulled back, jumped back up again. Like, jeez. All right, we're breaking back above this 53 area. It's still developing, but, you know, maybe sellers gave it a shot there. Ugh. Wouldn't half mind seeing if we can get another dip back to the 53s. S&P testing settlement. Yeah, it happens. You know, welcome to the market. Sometimes you just don't get a fill. The plight of buy, bid, sell, ask. Pulling back a little bit further. Nice little snap back down. And I will take that quick little move. That was a lot larger of a move than I was anticipating. I'm going to jump ship with the scalp and just accept the fact that that was nice. Because, man, when it snaps like that, one of two things is happening, like we saw at the bottom. It's either about ready to reverse and rip people's faces off, or it's about ready to reverse the other way and rip people's faces off. I don't want to be holding the bag. Why do you never do a market buy to ensure you get a fill? Does it make your entry position that much worse and decrease your probability of profit? I assume you buy. Yeah. So the reason why I don't use market orders is because the bid ask can be so thin on the NASDAQ that it'll jump sometimes points at a time. Like right there would be a fantastic example. If I hit buy market on that slide, I might have been filled way the heck up here where I was taking my profit. Right. So in situations like that, although this is extreme and it doesn't happen all the time like that, that difference of 3 or 4 ticks every single time, if you take that into account over the course of 1,000 trades, that's 3 or 4,000 ticks. Right? That's a massive difference by the end of the year. I would rather just not get filled. It's not worth it. Now, if I were trading the S&P, buy market wouldn't hurt my feelings. I mean, it's a thick enough of a market that that you're gonna get filled basically where you want to get filled. Swing traders will be re-upping in this area on this pullback to the 540s to 45s. Yeah, no problem. Let's not forget that today is the last day of the quarter, the last day of the first half of the year. Yeah, that will definitely impact things. Now, what makes it even more to that point, because that is definitely a point to make, is that it's summer. So, like, half the people are here, you know? That'll mess with things a little bit. You can see a lot of traders did the same thing I did. They got filled if they used by bid. Got a halfway decent fill down here, realized that snapped down a heck of a lot further than they were expecting. Jump ship, whether it was break even or profit or whatever, everybody bailed. We got some volume hitting the market, that's for sure. The POC to the upside would be back here, which the market is losing. We're not even through 945 yet. Bar 2 on the S&P. Huge bull bar. Hitting settlement. Might be the start of something. See if bulls can get a little bit more continuation to the upside here and get something going. Or if the sellers are just going to take it back. If we are going to subdivide this because it hasn't made a new low yet, even the POC is right up at the top. Yikes. Well, they got their work cut out for them, that's for sure. We got that previous POC on the ascent up at 53 to 54. The next one above that at 59 to 60. If we start cracking through them all, look at all these POCs stacking up. Excuse me, all these POCs stacking up down here. It's something to definitely be noted. Like, well, if so much volume is trading here and, you know, it just made a new low, now we've got another maybe lower high, we can definitely feel sellers trying. But if we start breaking above those, that's a problem, right? Then all the sellers are underwater, except for the ones back here at 578 from 3 this morning. Nice jump to the upside here. POC shifting higher, 54.75. We can see the POC stuck inside this whole area here. They're trying to get above the POC. Big, strong bull bars back to the upside. Holy crap. Man, these candles just Out of nowhere, these things are showing up. I love the long here for a continuation. Yeah, that was a breakout continuation back above the POC. The primary reason why I like that area so much is because of that quick little jerk back and how weak that bear bar closed. The fact that it went whap right underneath that previous bull bar's low and jerked all the way back up and closed on the POC, or, well, at the time it was just a hair underneath it. I really like that for a bull pop. A little aggressive, obviously, but that looked really nice. Shifting the POC back up again into the 60s. See if the bulls can get something going again. Okay, or a bull engulfing candle all the way back up to the highs. Eventually there'll be a pullback, he says, as the market screams further. Should have known, I only got one contract. Wait, I know how this works. Wait a minute. We're still hovering around in those POCs. Aggressive buyers may buy this pullback around the 58s, 59s here. Man, it's really far up and it's aggressive, but it's there, I guess. S&P working on 3 back-to-back incredibly strong bull bars. Two back-to-back really strong bull bars. The first candle was kind of hot garbage. But we do have a close above the highs. They closed above settlement. We've got candle gapping to the upside. They're demonstrating that the bulls at least have something going on. Now that they're pulling back, it's likely that we'll find, a little too late to the party, huh? Jeez, give me a second here. Down at those 82s as they fill in that gap down to that 5-minute POC 80.75. So we haven't hit that other area, so I'll still look for this one. Looking for the dip back down into the zone of interest 80.75s for a pop back up. NASDAQ creeping back above the highs, rallying back up. Really strong continuation. If the S&P goes above the previous bull bar's high, I'm not interested in a pullback if it goes back down again. I want it to be on this pullback. Otherwise, no thanks. They're trying. Market's slowly grinding its way back up. It doesn't feel like it's quite let loose yet. I'm going to go and assume that this is all still part of the same corrective phase for now, just because we haven't broken above that 75.50. So I'm going to include this in the move up and just consider this all developing with a POC back at 52.75. It doesn't really change the story much. It just cleans it up a little bit. Give me 1 second here. All right. Looking at if they can get a small little attempt to the downside, I could definitely see a reason why buyers may try to buy into a little dip underneath the 64s. Excuse me. Looking for a bullish continuation back to the upside, although it dipped right underneath it. The next trap zone would be underneath the 53s unless it just jerks all the way back up again. I didn't get a fill down there. 50s would be the next spot. They're starting to shift underneath the POC now and jerking back up to it. Careful in this area. I'm okay with the risk of leaving it open for now. I've only got the one. That's fine. But once we start dropping down into these 38s, that's the area. And that's why I say careful, because I don't want to increase my risk too much until we get to a zone of interest. .38s in that area, 35s, that would be the zone of interest. Nice bull bar, but in the face of all those bear bars, it's either going to be a V bottom or we're going to see a little bit more challenge on the lows. If we're looking back just a bit, now that we can see maybe this as another leg, even though it didn't break the highs, we could combine this into the volume on the pullback as well, which is stacking down the 5750s. Still don't think it makes sense to be a buyer yet. S&P, I'm still okay with it underneath the bear bar. That's fine. Didn't quite pulse far enough. POC shifting down. It is starting to become a bit more favorable now with these responses being fairly obvious. If the market just jerks all the way back up again, as far as objectives go, obviously then targets up there would make sense. But as it stands, I mean, you never know. It is the NASDAQ after all, but I would like to at least get something else down here if it can trap the base a bit more. They're trying to crack back above the POC area. We've got news at 10 o'clock around the corner. Still got about 7.5 minutes for that. A lot of volatility. S&P's getting close, 80.75s. $81.75 target out. Market's still hovering. S&P with a really nice bounce off of the settlements POC, or the settlement POC, the 5-minute POC rather. I still like this 38 area if the bulls can't take it from here. But otherwise, the objective's still up at the 71s. I mean, really all the way up to potentially even the 75s for a breakout above the top. POC shifting up a little bit. Short-term buyers who may have been aggressively buying into this area here may be exiting slightly at break even, given the way that the POC is kind of moving around here. Bear bar back down. Sellers will be looking for a continuation play lower from that. See if they can grab that move down to the 38s. We still have news around the corner yet. Nice bull bar up, but immediately reverses back down again, suggesting that they're not done trying to put pressure on the lows. The bulls might have other words for him, though. Wow. Man, look at these candles. They are fighting over them like it's going out of style. On the S&P, if the S&P does dip... Oh, hang on. NASDAQ's starting to put the pressure on here down at these lows. Nice little dip down there. Very nice little dip down here. I didn't get a fill there. All right, fair enough. Very, very aggressive volume slamming in on these lows. On the 538s. Previous POC zone of interest. It's a viable place to increase risk just to see if we can get a continuation back to the upside. If they are going to play ball with something like that, we should see a pulse at least up into the 550s. On the S&P, the next viable zone... I mean, really, the next viable zone would be... below bar 2, but at that point, that's just so ugly looking. I just don't know if that would be really worth it. Almost rather see if they can get a dip underneath the low of day if the S&P is going to push like that. We are going into 10 o'clock around the corner. Like I said, we've got news at 10 as well. So you've got to be okay with the risks going into that. If you're not, then the pulse back up or anywhere around here, it's obviously an exit if it doesn't fit your trade plan. With the news around the corner, the next one after that's going to be 10:30 inventories. So 10 o'clock news and then 10:30. Nice zone for a little bit more of an increase. And I'll leave it at the 5 for right now while we go into the news, just because I don't really want to deal with much more risk if we're going to be going into the news like that. Looking at the risk perspective, the target's back inside the POC, so the average is right about where I'd like it to be for now. Do you think there'll be buyers on the lows of bar 2 on the S&P? It's possible, sure. I just, I mean, if it's going to be going down that far underneath bar 2, then for me, I would rather wait to just see it go underneath the low, like why buy underneath 2 when, there's a better spot to load up on underneath the base. So as we go into 10 o'clock with the news around the corner, feel free to get those questions in. We'll get those covered for you, and then we'll swap over to the extended session to get all the fun movement as we go into the after morning session. I almost called it afternoon. Yikes. Not quite. 10 o'clock news. We do see some break-even response on the market. I'm not really interested in break-even. If you zoom out, you can see why I'm comfortable with my average where it is. If the market's going to rotate back up to a new high, my average is basically at the lows. So I'm totally fine with it here. But let's see here. Did I miss any questions? I think I got them all. Awesome. All right. Let's swap over to the extended session then. For those of you who are going to be ducking out for the rest of the morning, I hope you had a great morning session. For me, finally able to sink my teeth into something that I can build into a bit more. The rest of it's all been scalps. But yeah, we'll take it from there. Let's swap over. I hope you had a great day. Enjoy. If I missed any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, jhb@ssftg.com. We'll talk to y'all later, right? Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.